Hello, and welcome to our case study analysis for Every Coin Has Two Sides, brought to you by the group members Dr. Dillard, Heidi Neely, and Leslie Queen. In this case study analysis, we are going to discuss our findings for the setting, the background, the characters, and some of the problems that this case brought to the forefront. So first, in the setting is a modern-day company that works closely with suppliers to ship parts and around the U.S. So it has the Northeast, Southwest, and they also have a senior. Some of the background includes two upper-level managers having a conversation. One being a senior manager going to the internal organization development consultant, Paul, to let him know that one of his lower level managers is having an issue with his team. And the characters of this case study include Paul, who is the organization development consultant, Tom, the senior manager, who's running him with the issues. There's Brad, a former manager who was once in the position of Jared, who is the main person in this case study having issues, along with his 10 employees and the relationship with the suppliers. So some of the issues that they're having that Tom brought to Paul was that he received some complaints from Brad, who was the former manager, on behalf of the employees. And he said that the complaints he heard was that Jared was not being a good team member, he was not a good listener, they complained of not being taken seriously, being spoken to in a condescending way, and being treated as incompetent. So Tom took this information and he gave the feedback to Jared. Jared was surprised. He didn't see a problem with this team. He was confused. He had gotten such great feedback from his employees that he had documentation for. So trying to figure out what was going on here. So my group determined that the central problem was lack of communication. Some of the problems that arose that stemmed around the central problem was Jared had problems with both written and verbal communication. His team gets negative feedback from Jared. He speaks positively about them to Paul and Tom, but on paper it doesn't seem that he sees them in such a high manner. Another communication issue is that Tom should have communicated these concerns with Jared in a timely manner. He waited about 3 months to do so. Jared should have addressed the problems he heard about sooner from his team. Jared was not receiving constructive feedback from the team, so, and he needs to learn how to handle complaints appropriately. Jared wasn't listening. And in communication, he wasn't practicing active listening. Then on the other hand, Jared's team was not giving him effective feedback. They did on paper, but verbally, he didn't know. They didn't tell him in meetings how they were feeling or what thoughts they had because of the pushback that Jared gave. And then Jared contradicts himself a little bit. He says one thing in public, private, something else. So in addition to the main problem, which was lack of communication, there were many secondary problems we saw as well. One being in the organization, a lack of trust between Jared and his team. The team and the bond with the former manager, Brad, really didn't have a place in this. The team having to go around Jared to be resourceful and innovative, having to schedule meetings with other departments. In the organization, there was complacency. Some of the team members weren't open to change. Jared initially was open to getting their feedback, but then he's like, no, I know what I will do. We'll do differently. The team wanted to do things differently. So we saw a trend where people were stuck in their old ways. A proper team leader and a team relationship wasn't there. Jared tried to initiate a rewards program, which in turn seemed like favoritism. It wasn't anything rewarding for the group. He only rewarded a certain number of people in the group. So also, he copied the team on emails that should have been just one on one. And they should have been more communicated a little bit. And then another secondary problem was Jared not being receptive to feedback. Jared knew it all. You know, some of the team members came to him with examples of when they wanted to, they had a good idea, and Jared said, no, this is how we're going to do it. This is how I say do it. So that became an issue. Um, so Jared wanted to see things his way. So those are some of the issues and the problems.
Let's begin discussing the team strengths. So we do know that they are able to work effectively when led effectively. They also have a very strong work ethic. Jared, as a team leader, he's very knowledgeable and does believe in defined roles, which is great, because this can outline the role for people on the team. Members are also very proactive in completing their work related to their initiatives. For instance, Mia took ownership when meeting with the department for the organization. Tom appears open to suggestions as well, and he is very open to feedback from the consultant that they hired on. So let's move on to the four frames. So the first frame that we're going to focus on is Jared's, which is a structural lens. All right, with that structural lens, let's look at strategic planning and decision making. So Jared holds one-on-one meetings. He holds team meetings to divide initiatives. Jared makes decisions based on data from surveys. So this shows his rational and logical mindset. Additionally, Jared's goal setting is very much to help the organization progress as a whole. He provides incentives for the team, and this is showcased when he gives lunch to a team member, and he tries to control one of the team members' performance, Olivia. Jared also um, showcases his support for different team members, wanting to see them develop, such as when he was encouraging people to help Beth. Jared allowed his team members to even come up with their own initiatives and choose the teams and leaders. The way that he approaches conflict, he is a problem solver. However, he does need to become a better active listener. Now, in juxtaposition, we have Brad, who was the former leader of the team. So with Brad, he allowed his team members to provide their own input, and he also held them accountable for the decision making as well. As far as goal setting, his primary goal was to ensure that the team was productive and cohesive. Um, Brad shared information with Tom even after he left. And this showcased how Brad had high expectations for the team as a whole and wanted everyone to be cohesive. We must say that there was not a smooth transition after Brad left. Brad allowed for his team members to own their roles, truly own their roles, which is a stark difference from the way that Jared manages. The way that Brad approached conflict is very open with communication, and he is also very solution oriented. So let's look at the five dysfunctions of a team as presented by Lencioni. We have avoidance of accountability, lack of commitment, absence of trust, selfishness, and inattention to detail, to results, excuse me. So, as far as accountability, avoidance of accountability is concerned, um, J- Jared showed that there was a shock when getting negative feedback from his team. Additionally, due to his delivery, it was very hard for members to own up on their uh, weaknesses or missteps because they felt very uncomfortable. Additionally, expectations are not always communicated effectively, which showcased in the overall performance of the team members. There also was a lack of commitment. Jared is not continuing to provide coaching throughout his involvement with the team. Team members are not continuing to voice their opinions as well with the manager. This is opposition to their behavior when they were working with Brad. So, as far as selfishness is concerned, everything needs to be approved by Jared. We see that Jared sees himself positionally as being the leader, so that kind of um, conflicts with the shared interests of the group. And Jared does not always own his missteps as a leader. So, in attention to results, Jared focuses on what the person needs to improve on rather than looking at their strengths. The team is unsure of how to be rewarded for their outcomes. So, this makes them doubt that everything is done in their best interest or the best interest of the team. Jared also does not um, provide data uh, in regards to attention to results. He does not provide data, but does not give effective strategies on improving outcomes. So let's look at the cross-functional issues that are presented within the case. All right, first we have misaligned goals and priorities. Second, too little communication. Third, lack of trust. And fourth, no method for measuring impact. So the first one, misaligned goals and priorities, we see that primarily with the case of Mia, who was very proactive with her initiative. However, this was in contrast to the way Jared viewed things. He felt as if Mia should follow the chain of command and be micromanaged when that was not what she considered to be the objective. Secondly, there was too little communication. So everyone did not know what their particular direction should be. Also, the communication style was not effective for the team members. They felt like there were some undertones that may or may not have been um, construed the correct way. So there was definitely some gap in understanding. The third is a lack of trust because of the communication style, because of some of the things that were occurring. The team members simply did not trust in Jared's leadership. Also, Jared did not trust in the professionalism of his team members. Fourth, there's no method for measuring impact. Though Jared did present data at many of the meetings, there was no strategy on how we were going to utilize this data to improve the team. Also, the data that was presented to the team members didn't seem substantial or even relevant to what they were doing. Finally, we can look at the structure as a whole, the organizational structure. Jared's organization utilizes a rational system due to its focus on meeting objectives. So when we look at the entire structure, we know that is a formal structure. The goals, they need to be a shared vision and mission, and there needs to be better communication to the employees. We see that in this system, they have technology such as suppliers, computers, email, software, and all of the participants are members of this organization. And overall, it is a corporate environment. There still needs to be a set of formality there.
After we looked at the different parts of the organization, we began to look at solutions to try to fix this problem of communication. And within those solutions, we looked at some pros and cons of each one. So the first one you see on the screen, number one, says change or reorganize the suppliers. We felt like this seemed to be a constant issue within the organization, and that if you were to do this, some positive things that would come out of this would be it would increase the efficiency of the department and the organization, and it would also hopefully decrease inaccuracies that they seem to be having. Now, on the other side of that, some cons of changing and reorganizing the suppliers might be that it takes some time to build relationships with new suppliers. Transferring accounts can sometimes take a little while. So there could be some good things and some bad things to changing or reorganizing the suppliers. Now, the second thing we thought of as a solution would be to conduct a communication audit. And we read in our text that that includes things like holding meetings with all parties involved, really surveying, analyzing, collecting data on communication that has already happened within the organization, giving questionnaires to folks, and then communicating those survey results. So, being able to analyze communication that has already taken place. And some pros of that might be it increases connections, it decreases ambiguity within the system or the organization, and it hopefully would promote a decentralized network. Now, a disadvantage of that or a con could be that sometimes change is hard, and knowing different ways to do things might be a little bit difficult for Jared and some different people in the organization. The team also might fear, kind of in that last step where the results are relayed to the team members, that there might be some retaliation. So you just have to be careful with that. But conducting the communication audit, we feel, would be a good solution. Number three is we think they need to try to rebuild the team. This could be through team building activities. We hope this would build relationships to increase trust within the group, also help them to extend grace to one another, and hopefully put things in the past that had been bothersome. But team building activities, sometimes a disadvantage to that can be the introverts of the group kind of shy away from these things and feel like they're being put kind of in a show of some kind. So you might have to watch out for the introverts of the group. Number four solution is hold a meeting with Jared. And we really felt like Paul needed to hold a meeting with Tom, and then Tom and Jared have a meeting and kind of discuss some findings and go over both the verbal and the written communication examples throughout the case. We hope the positive that will come through from this is to help Jared see where he's falling short, to help him see his contradictions between maybe verbal conversations with Tom and Paul and the positive things that are said about his staff versus maybe the written communication with the actual staff members that's not very positive. A disadvantage of this, or a con that could come from this meeting, might be that Jared gets defensive and that he shuts down. So you'd have to be careful and use careful language in that meeting. The fifth solution could be that Jared should start using the feedback control model. And we read that this is where goals are set, standards are set of measuring those goals, evaluation takes place to see if progress has been made, and then action is taken as needed. So we really feel like this would help Jared. It would help there to be consistency within the group. Everyone would be on the same page and know what's expected within the organization. But on the flip side, there might be some cause for anxiety if Jared is not being able to give that positive or constructive feedback in the last step. Number six says that a solution we thought of would be that Jared needs to practice active listening. And we hope this would help him increase both his positive verbal and written communication with the staff, being able to truly hear what they are saying and sending positive feedback to them. We hope this would also increase morale within the team. However, we know that some members of this team seem to take things the wrong way on occasion. And so Jared would have to be really careful about the things that he said and how that was taken by his team members. And then the last solution we thought of was staff development, being able to maybe look at things about how to handle conflict, time management, going over clear expectations. So hopefully positive things would be that the team is built up, management is helped overall, and it creates boundaries within the group. So everyone kind of knows what's expected and how to conduct themselves within the organization. Difficulties that come from this could be that the team might see this as just one more thing that Jared wants them to do and possibly a waste of their time. So we'd have to be careful in looking at those different solutions. Taking all of those solutions into account, we came up with a plan of action and kind of a 1, 2, 3, 4 of things that we think should happen to get this team back on track and help Jared to be a positive leader. So the first thing is that Paul or HR or someone needs to conduct that communication audit to be able to say, here's what was said, here's what was written, let's talk to all parties involved, let's really set some ground rules from here on out, and let's communicate those survey results. Which leads us into number 2, we feel like you need to hold meetings to review the communication audit and therefore set future expectations so that we all know goals that we're working toward and exactly what's expected of Jared and then what Jared is going to expect of his team. The third thing we think in the plan of action would be to begin holding trainings and staff development to help rebuild the team. We know that the team worked well together with Brad, so we know that that is something they are capable of. We just feel like there needs to be a little bit more training to help them do that. Such things as proper work communication, how to handle conflict, time management, bonding type activities. And then number 4, we hope that Jared will implement the feedback control model. We hope he is able to set goals, tell them how the goals are going to be measured, measure the goals, and then make changes as needed to his organization. So we really feel like this will be a good plan for this organization moving forward. And then last, kind of a summary of the whole case. We looked at Jared as being our main character. He seemed to have that central problem of issues with just communication, being able to say things and write things in a way that helped his team move forward, but yet in a nice and cordial manner. So we developed the plan of action of conducting the communication audit, reviewing the results, setting those goals and expectations, working to hold team trainings and staff development, and then hopefully Jared would implement that feedback control model to realize that his team is his most important asset, and hopefully he realizes that and it's able to help them grow and help his organization grow. And the last slide is some of our references.